I'm wearing this tinfoil hat for a reason. I fear I'm slipping over the edge, like Alice falling down the hole. Please give me just half a minute to see if I can't drag you down with me. 30 seconds. What do you got to lose? Ready? 2 simple questions about the OKC bombing. 1, do you believe that one of the many downtown surveillance cameras caught video of the explosion? This was 1995. Surveillance was cheap and common. So do you believe there was video footage, even if it's obstructed view, or at least a shot of the structure's collapse, which took 7 seconds, or of McVeigh driving in the Ryder truck, parking it, walking 3 blocks to his getaway car? Second and final question, have you ever seen this video? Okay, welcome to the rabbit hole. For the descent, I'll be your guide. And look, I'm new to the rabbit hole. I'm not a conspiracy theory guy. I've never followed conspiracies, taken them seriously, or done them on my channel. In fact, the only reason I even read this story about the heroic cop was because I thought it might make something interesting to discuss here. And because it was on CNN, which is not exactly known for Twilight Zone type stuff. The claims were that the cop was murdered by federal agents as part of an elaborate cover-up. Still, at the end of the day, I didn't see any evidence that convinced me that this wasn't just a cop suffering PTSD who took his own life. And that's pretty much what I reported on the last video, though I did uncover enough suspicious activity by the FBI that we should at least be asking more questions about what this powerful agency does. So here's how I stumbled down the rabbit hole. After recording the video about the CNN article, the federal building was in downtown OKC, surrounded by modern buildings such as hotels and apartment complexes. Well, I searched YouTube, Google, and Bing for the explosion. Nothing. No video. Huh? It just wasn't possible. I tried a few more search terms. Nothing. Not only no video, but no stories about the lack of video. It made no sense. So next, at the suggestion of my friend Tom, I tried DuckDuckGo. Bingo. Not video of the bombing, no. But a bunch of stories about the missing tapes were right there on page 1. Okay, I was getting warm. This was getting interesting. Something about these videotape stories were being filtered by Google and Microsoft, just like stories about lab leaks or the 2020 election. We know why they don't want us to see stuff on those topics. Misinformation, things that don't fit their narrative. Okay, fine, let's not argue with them. But why were they filtering stories about the FBI's refusal to release video of the OKC bombing? And also filtering stories about the government finally releasing some video after being forced to by a judge, the tapes they do have. Video where the bombing is, however, not shown, nor is McVeigh's van, nor video of him walking to his getaway car and driving away. The government seized 22 surveillance tapes from local businesses, but managed to get no footage of any of these important things, even though early on in the case, they referred in public testimony to the existence of that very footage. All right, maybe you think there's a logical reason for all this. Maybe you're busy and inclined to say, well, there must be an explanation. I just don't feel like doing a deep dive. Well, I feel you. Life is short. And there are many more interesting ways to spend our time, such as old episodes of Gilligan's Island. But again, I ask, do you believe no such video existed? And I have to trouble you with one more question. I don't mean to be an annoying pest, but I know you care about your country and you care about the truth. So my question is, if you think such video existed, and since obviously if it did, the government is either hiding it or has destroyed it, does it bother you? Look, I don't know what to think either. I don't believe in the Rosicrucians, the Illuminati, reptilian aliens occupying the British throne, alien ships inside Area 51. As far as I'm concerned, Lee Harvey shot JFK, Sirhan shot RFK, and the Egyptian pyramids were built by, Egyptians. I think most American presidents have been decent human beings, whether you agree with their politics or not. Carter and Reagan, both good men. The Bushes and Obama. Truman and Eisenhower. Imperfect men, but people that cared about their country and had a sense of decency. I don't want to fall down a rabbit hole that has me even considering the possibility that the government, specifically the FBI and the DOJ, are hiding or destroying evidence about the worst terrorist event in our history before 9/11. I want to be clear. Timothy McVeigh bombed the federal building. McVeigh was a far-right extremist. His main accomplice was Terry Nichols, also a far-right extremist. I am beyond skeptical about any claim that there were other explosives inside the building. I just want to know if there can be an innocent explanation for what seems to be missing video. I desperately want there to be one, but not so desperate that I'm willing to blind myself to whatever evidence or truth is there for us to find. How about you? Well, you're still listening, which means you care about the truth. You put it above partisan politics. Well, I see no choice but to at least check out a few dark corners inside the rabbit hole while I'm down here. The corner I want to explore today involves the videotapes because there's a really interesting history of litigation around those tapes. In fact, poking my head down a narrow corridor on the lookout for rabbits, I bumped into a familiar face. Merrick Garland, the current Attorney General, the man supervising the weird January 6th investigation, a man whose Justice Department is holding people in prison, many for nonviolent charges related to January 6th, individuals who have been in jail for 2 years without a trial even being scheduled, held in conditions which are described as deplorable and even torturous. Well, Merrick Garland was right there, heading the government prosecution in OKC back in 1995. Right there, hurling objections at the judge when attorneys tried to question FBI agents about what they knew about this video surveillance, or about a man witnesses said was with McVeigh. Over the last 2 years, Garland has fought the release of surveillance from January 6th. He's fought to prevent officers from testifying whose stories didn't match the official narrative. He's repeatedly refused to admit, under oath, if there were government agents within the crowd that stormed the Capitol. You object to what I'm saying? Okay. Hold on. Many people did really bad things on January 6th, right? Absolutely. You say lock them up and throw away the key. Well, I say some of these folks did do some bad things, and they 100% deserve to go to jail. I don't know the specifics of their cases, but there's probably some dudes that did some awful things. Charge them. But do you want to live in a country where people can be held without ever given a trial? Or where the idea is to hold people in agony as long as it takes until they confess, so there never is a trial, no public examination of evidence? Does that seem like a country you want to live in? Do you trust a media that refuses to ask questions about any of this? Do you trust a media that couldn't be bothered to fill out the Freedom of Information forms to request the video of the OKC bombing? Or to demand that all the January 6th footage be made public, or at least be given to the defendants as required by law so they can defend themselves? You think I'm taking sides, but I'm not. Look, anyone who tried to stop the certification of electoral votes should be prosecuted. Anyone who committed violence that day should be prosecuted. Even if someone just entered the Capitol, they should at least be hit with a misdemeanor and fined. And Trump should be disqualified by voters. Not because he doesn't have some legitimate gripes. He does. But because you can't mess with the peaceful transfer of power. But it is possible for an ice cream sundae to have sprinkles and hot fudge. This is not an either or. Any honest person should be concerned both about Trump's actions that day and about things like unequal justice, political prisoners, cruel and unusual punishment. Yes, we should ask hard questions if anyone, including politicians, tried to stop or interfere with the ratification of the vote on January 6th. But we should also want to know if the FBI had agents and paid informants inside that mob. What were they doing? The government refuses to answer, just like it refused to release the OKC bombing video. Why would we just accept this FBI refusal without question? Whistleblowers are saying the FBI in Washington refused to give the January 6th surveillance footage even to the FBI office in Boston so they could identify potential suspects from a bus that came from Boston to the protest. This despite the fact that Washington was pressuring Boston to investigate everyone on that bus, whether they went near the Capitol or not. What was so important about hiding that surveillance that even the Boston FBI had to be refused access? If you find yourself saying, this is all QAnon stuff, well, there's a diagnosis for that condition. It's called cognitive dissonance. That's what happens when you learn something true that makes you so uncomfortable that you seek ways to dismiss it. So again, I ask, do you believe there was video of the OKC bombing? Do you believe one of dozens of cameras downtown caught the bombing or the collapse or the Ryder truck or McVeigh walking to his getaway car or that car leaving? Well, have you seen any of that video? If those questions don't challenge your cognitive dissonance, I'm afraid there may be no cure. All right, let's get to the litigation evidence on the OKC tapes. It's incredibly compelling stuff. Timothy McVeigh was arrested and connected to the bombings that day, April 19th. Already on April 27th, a little more than a week later, there was a preliminary hearing in district court. The purpose of the hearing was to show probable cause in charging McVeigh. Leading the government case was none other than Merrick Garland, then an aide to the Deputy Attorney General. His main witness was FBI Special Agent John Hursley. Hursley recounted how he had seen both video and stills depicting McVeigh's rented Ryder truck moving towards the federal building. The footage came from the Regency Towers apartment complex less than a block from the federal building. It apparently had an obstructed view of the federal building, but a view. He was not there to testify about surveillance of the building. He was there to give evidence that McVeigh was driving the van, but he does reference videos. He also looked at video possibly depicting McVeigh leaving in his getaway vehicle, though he said the images were unclear. But the witnesses he spoke to were clear that McVeigh was with someone else. There were 4 witnesses he talked to about it with, and all 4 were in agreement that McVeigh was with one other person, both inside the van and inside the getaway car. In fact, one of the witnesses actually gave McVeigh directions 20 minutes before the bombing. So this witness was close enough to talk to McVeigh, and he later picked him out of a photo lineup. And he said there was someone in the passenger seat. The government denies this second man, so-called John number 2, exists. Perhaps video of the van driving to the federal building, or of McVeigh walking a few blocks to his car, or of the car driving off, would actually confirm one way or the other whether he was alone. But apparently no such video exists, if the government is telling the truth. During the trial that followed, the government presented no surveillance video at all. The government would be required to give McVeigh's defense team any evidence like this, but McVeigh's team wouldn't have fussed about it, because if there was someone else in the van, McVeigh was protecting him and protected him until his last breath. The story doesn't end there, though, and it still has not ended all these years later. In 1999, investigative journalist David Hoffman filed a Freedom of Information lawsuit demanding documents related to the video. Note that no mainstream journalists were curious enough to do that. The job of journalists is to dig deep, pursue the story, but neither ABC News nor the New York Times has any interest in whether the government has surveillance video. Well, the government did send Hoffman documents as required by law. According to those documents, the government had 22 surveillance tapes stored in Oklahoma and 1 tape at FBI headquarters in Washington. Maybe there's nothing useful on those tapes. Maybe the Ryder truck never shows up on any of those tapes, nor the explosion or the 7-second collapse or McVeigh escaping. Maybe none of that's picked up. Maybe. If so, why not release the tapes to end all doubt? The FBI filed multiple motions for summary judgment against that reporter, asking the judge to throw out the case. They gave a variety of reasons, but the judge dismissed their arguments. In fact, the judge accused the FBI of shoddy conduct and stated that he was inclined to order the tapes released, but that a previous judicial order had sealed all evidence, including any tapes, until the appeals of McVeigh and Nichols were exhausted. But he also said that that day was coming when the appeals would be over. So the government knew this judge would soon be able to order the release of the video. However, apparently the process never reached this point. The next effort was made by an attorney, Jesse Trentadue, who filed a FOIA for the tapes. Well, after many years of effort, he actually was finally successful in that they sent him 30 recordings. But again, the story gets weird because the footage they sent had nothing of interest. No van, no McVeigh on foot, no getaway car, no explosion, no building collapse. 4 cameras at 4 different locations facing the building failed to record that moment. The FBI explained that maybe the tape ran out, or someone might just coincidentally have been changing the VCR tape when the bomb went off. So apparently, the recordings they released showed the federal building right up until the moments before the blast, then they went out, and then restarted moments after the blast. Well, the FBI's explanation is essentially that just bad luck. I'm going to link an interesting story on this below from CBS News in 2014. Trentadue was now suing the government for the missing video, insisting the government was holding something back. It's interesting to learn why this attorney was suing in the first place. Months after the attack, his brother was arrested on suspicion of being John Doe number 2. A few days later, his brother, Kenneth Trentadue, was found strangled to death inside the interrogation room. His body had 41 wounds and bruises, but it was ruled a suicide. I told you we'd be going down the rabbit hole, didn't I? Even OKC's chief medical examiner would later say that it was very likely he was murdered in the interrogation room. The family of Trentadue was awarded $1 million for wrongful death. So the brother was fighting a battle which took more than a decade to get the FBI to release the videotapes from OKC. He'd finally got what the FBI claimed it had, but the video showed nothing. So now he was in court with them and trying to get the judge to order them to release more. He showed the judge a Secret Service document from shortly after the bombing, which described video footage showing suspects exiting the truck 3 minutes before the bomb went off. According to the government, the Secret Service was mistaken. No such video ever existed, they said. I want to pause to discuss evidence and sources. Mostly I do true crime investigations, and one of the things that I quickly learned is that in pretty much every high-profile case, there's contradictory witness testimony. So you have to be very careful in how you process that. You don't want to cherry-pick things to fit a narrative. In fact, the problem is that police and prosecutors frequently do just that, cherry-pick, as of course do journalists. So you have to wade through it very carefully. Sometimes it's actually just too hard to assign a likelihood of any particular testimony as being true or accurate. For example, the reporting here says that there were 4 cameras facing the federal building, and all of them went offline moments before the attack and came back moments after it. Well, I don't have the video to see it for myself. If those 4 cameras all came from different systems, then that would completely defy belief. But what if these were 4 cameras on one system with 1 VCR recording them? Then we'd be talking about 1 system going down before the blast, not 4. It's a world of difference. Even 1 going down right before the blast is suspicious. But without being able to see the video myself, it's hard. Trentadue says the videos all went off moments before the blast and came on again moments after. But what if he's exaggerated? What if it was 1 system with 4 cameras that went down at 8:30 in the morning and then came back on at 10? I mean, without the tapes, it's really hard to just judge it. So let's go forward a little more. An article published by Mother Jones went deep down the rabbit hole in 2011. Mother Jones is a leftist but kind of mainstream publication. It's interesting how things have reversed in the last few years since Trump, really. Historically, the left has been very suspicious of federal law enforcement and spy agencies. But no way could an article like this appear now on Mother Jones or any mainstream thing, because strangely, now the left will not entertain anything that might challenge the integrity of the FBI or the CIA. Funny how that works, isn't it? They used to hate those institutions. But once they came to control them, and once these institutions began attacking Donald Trump, suddenly, after generations, the left had a complete change of heart. Now it's considered unpatriotic to question federal agencies and spies. Misinformation, they call it. And such stories have to be thoroughly filtered from the news and from search engines. If you doubt this, Google is free. Check it out. See if you can find any story from a non-conservative source after 2017 that questions any of these agencies. Happy hunting. So anyway, in the 2011 Mother Jones article, they revealed that the FBI explained that the video cameras in the Murrah Federal Building itself had been down for some time. The government produced a witness, an elevator repairman who had done some work in the building. He said the camera system had been newly installed 2 years before, but was turned off during some work and never turned on again. Just more bad luck. Well, counter witnesses came forward. Impressive ones. First, OKC officer Don Browning testified that after the blast, he observed 2 men in FBI coats removing cameras from the building. The next counter witness was an employee for a contractor that served the surveillance system. He testified that he made frequent inspections, including of cameras and monitors, and everything was running properly, according to him, right up to when the bomb went off. Finally, there's the Secret Service document that we mentioned that refers to a video showing McVeigh's Ryder truck pulling up and then parking in front of the building. So the government says there's no video from the federal building itself. They brought in 1 witness, an elevator repairman. Contrast that with the other evidence about the surveillance system for the federal building itself. What's the truth? Was the building's surveillance down? None of us can say. If the government is going to deny the existence of tapes, or if it's destroyed them, there's really nothing to do about it. Look, in these big tragic events, there is a kind of fog of war, many agencies doing investigations, hundreds or thousands of witnesses being interviewed by local media and the police, all kinds of evidence being gathered. There are always going to be aha things that one can look at if they really want there to be a conspiracy. For example, let's say it was someone's job to run the surveillance system, and this person, like many government employees, just didn't give a shit and was negligent. That person's probably not coming forward to testify. Or let's say, hypothetically, that there was a couple of FBI agents standing across the street 5 minutes before the bombing, and they were just shooting the shit, not connected to the bombing, just there by coincidence. And they're supposed to meet someone somewhere else in the city at 9, so they leave just before that. 2 minutes later, boom. Well, when the FBI later looks at this video, knowing the public will suspect their involvement, maybe they destroy the video. Again, that's just an absurd hypothetical to show that sometimes foul play happens for reasons that are totally unconnected to the purpose of the inquiry. And those are the kinds of things that will go undiscovered forever. There's one more fascinating angle on the OKC videotapes. In the fall of 1995, so half a year after the attack, with McVeigh and Nichols awaiting trial, an FBI agent tried to sell a copy of the tape to Dateline NBC. Crazy, right? This was an active agent, a 16-year FBI veteran trying to make a buck on the sly. FBI documents detail this episode. A source from the TV network contacted the FBI, which made this report. It's worth reading the whole thing. So here's the FBI report. Hold on a second. Okay. The source related that Dateline, an NBC television show, had been contacted by an unknown attorney representing a Los Angeles agent of the FBI. On behalf of the agent, the attorney offered to sell a copy of the surveillance tape recovered from Oklahoma City, which shows the activity outside the federal building just prior to the bomb blast. It was represented that the videotape would contain time-lapse photography of the arrival and then departure of a UPS truck. Then a Ryder truck pulls up and a male resembling McVeigh is seen exiting the driver's side of the Ryder truck and then walking away, and a second male then walks away in the same direction as the first male. So now the FBI was hunting down this rogue agent. According to identified reports, the FBI opened an investigation into the chain of custody of the surveillance footage from OKC. They were trying to hunt down any copies. The agent trying to sell the footage was actually based in LA. He'd gotten the footage from another agent in OKC. So copies were being made and passed around. In fact, an FBI agent assigned to this said at least 12 copies were made in OKC by the agent there and given out to friends. According to him, the producers of Dateline viewed the videotape themselves, along with the attorney for the agent trying to sell the tape. They viewed it at an Orange County deputy sheriff's home in October of 1995. If true, Dateline viewed it, going to the deputy sheriff's home to be safe, then immediately contacted the FBI. According to that report, the video was a 19-minute compilation tape from multiple camera angles. It showed the Ryder truck showing up, then the bomb detonating a couple minutes later. Dateline never bought the tape for, I think, obvious reasons. It was key evidence in an upcoming trial. So what happened to the rogue agent? Unknown. The source at NBC gave the FBI a lot of details about this agent, such as the fact that he was a former sniper instructor, what school he taught at, what years he served in the Marines. So the FBI, no doubt, had no problem tracking him down. But what happened then is unknown. The FBI would have tried to track down all the copies of the videotape. But man, now I feel like I'm so far down the rabbit hole that the Red Queen will appear any moment. I mean, it sounds like urban legend. Tracking down copies of this mysterious videotape, the possibility that some remain out there. This really isn't the kind of topic I want to do on my channel. Real grassy knoll stuff. I feel like Mel Gibson in that movie with Julia Roberts. That's a really good movie. This is why I don't like conspiracy theories. I find this stuff unpleasant. I'd rather watch old episodes of Hogan's Heroes. Now there was a conspiracy. I'd see nothing. But I go back to the thing that first sucked me down the rabbit hole. Documents tell us the government collected video from 22 cameras in OKC, not including the federal building itself, where the system was either on or off, depending on which witnesses you believe. Yet the government claims nothing was caught on video. Not the explosion, not the building collapse, not the Ryder truck, not McVeigh leaving the truck, not McVeigh walking 3 blocks to his car. Not McVeigh standing there watching the explosion. Not McVeigh driving off in the getaway car. None of the 22 cameras caught a glimpse of any of that. Do you believe that? The main prosecutor then is now the Attorney General. Under his direction, the FBI launched a massive multi-state program called Operation Cold Snap, whose target was right-wing extremism. In Michigan and Virginia, at least, that operation created, organized, and funded extremist plots to kill the Democrat governors. The plotters in each case were told by the government agents that they could obtain explosives for them, that they could help them make bombs. That's documented in these recent court cases, not on some Alex Jones type site. Michigan and Virginia are both battleground states. Both played critical roles in the 2020 election and in the balance of power in Congress. The plots were portrayed as foiled by the FBI in the nick of time. Those who ran these operations were promoted to key positions in Washington. And they used all this not only to prosecute dozens of people, but to obtain massive amounts of funding to go after more extremists. To this day, the FBI and the DOJ fight the release of any information related to this stuff. Even congressional subpoenas are ignored. And what we know, we only know because it came out during discovery and trials. The mainstream media has almost no interest in any of this. And in fact, they serve as the mouthpieces for the government, smearing anyone who dares to ask questions. You have to go to DuckDuckGo in order to find these articles, even old ones on mainstream sites like the one I found from CBS or from Mother Jones. Maybe it can all be explained. Please, explain it to me. I really want you to. It's dark down here inside the rabbit hole. I want out, and this hat really isn't very comfortable. Tell me why no cameras caught any useful video that day in OKC. If anyone knows Merrick Garland, have him get in touch. He must have all the answers. Then I can go back to doing true crime, short horror fiction, and bad cancer jokes. Oh shit, here comes the Mad Hatter of the Cheshire Cat. I better be quiet so they don't spot me. Have a good one.